I was optimistically hopeful when I watched Superman movie that I was going to enjoy a lot of these movies going forward. But as of recently, now that I've watched a Supergirl movie, I understand now that I have to be a lot more restrictive with my expectations. So I recently just finished watching the Supergirl movie, and I am going to be unapologetically honest. The very first few minutes of this video is going to be spoiler free, and then I'm going to go deeper into the spoilers of this movie. First thing first, James Gunn's grubby little fingerprints are all over this movie. All of his Guardians of the Galaxy-esque fingerprints are just imprinted in the veins of this movie. Because if you are going to watch this movie thinking it's going to be its own unique thing and it's going to try its best to do a great representation and adaptation of the comic book that it's so heavily based on, then you are going to be severely disappointed. Because it does a very poor job of trying to do that said adaptation, while at the same time trying to say, hey, we respect all of the things that James Gunn has been doing with Superman, and we love that he did a lot of stuff with Guardians of the Galaxy, so we're going to try and replicate that and do that on our own. That is what this movie is screaming to me from the very moment that I watched like the first 30 minutes of the movie. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? No, it's not necessarily a bad thing. The problem is that they executed it very poorly. It doesn't stick the landing on the things that they are trying to convey. A lot of the emotional beats don't feel like they stick. A lot of the action scenes where they have the certain music, some of it works, like it's not the worst, but it doesn't stick as well as it should be, especially at the ending fight scene. That is probably one of the worst needle drops I've seen in a very long time, because a lot of needle drops in different movies, I'm relatively satisfied at the end of it, and I was actually enjoying the very beginning portions of the fight scene. But at the very end, when everything is supposed to be concluding, that musical choice at the end just didn't hit. It doesn't work. And I could see, like, I remember seeing a tweet after watching the movie saying that, like, oh, it wasn't our fault, you know, it was somebody's choice. We got an idea from James Gunn. It was added like 2 weeks before the movie was fully edited. Bro, you still put the song in there. The song is not good. Now, the actual plot of the movie is very bare bones. It's very simple. It's very surface level. I tried my very best to see what depth they could have, and there was a lot of potential for depth to be had in this movie, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, it doesn't go much deeper. It doesn't, you know, take the time that it has, you know, use the adequate amount of time that we have sitting in this theater to develop the very emotions and very themes and the very relationships that Kara and the other character that she runs into, Ruthie, to build alongside each other when they're going through it. It just feels very contrived and arbitrary. It doesn't feel believable that these two characters, as they interact with each other, they don't feel like they genuinely have empathetic feelings towards each other without it feeling like it's just like, oh, they just do because the script says so. Now, I will say this, the actual actors of the movie did a pretty good job. Like, Millie Alcock as Supergirl did a pretty good job. Lobo was probably one of the bigger highlights of the movie. You know, he has been a massive fan cast for Lobo for a very long time. So when it was finally revealed and has been put into motion that he's going to be in this movie, and when he actually gets on screen and how he's acting, he feels like Lobo. Like, I'm familiar with Lobo, not super, but relatively familiar with Lobo, and from what I've seen in other adaptations, he does a pretty good job to emulate that character. He looks great, but he doesn't really do much, like, to a point that I believe he shouldn't have been in the movie, because I'm glad he's there, because that was the one thing I was actually looking forward to, but for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like he should, but he doesn't add or take away anything in the plot. He's kind of just there to be badass and good looking and all that good stuff. Like, it's supposed to be kind of like a little bit of a gag, but at the same time, like, he doesn't necessarily need to be in the story for the most part. I'm not mad that little Jojo, Mr. Momo, is playing Lobo, trust me, but still, like, he doesn't necessarily need to be in this movie. And yeah, sure, some of the action in the movie is actually not that bad. You know, it's not great, it's pretty average compared to the average superhero film, so it's nothing too crazy, but you know, they do good enough where I can actually be somewhat entertained. But one of the biggest faults that this movie does is betray the very theme that they're supposed to portray. Now I'm going to be going into the more spoiler territory side of things, so if you haven't watched the movie and you want to watch it and then come back to this video, please do so now. This is your warning. And I'm going to start off light with the spoilers, and I'm going to go deeper as I go along. So the theme of this movie is that revenge is not the answer. That is the essential and main theme of the movie. especially given that this movie is supposed to be a somewhat direct adaptation of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, a very popular comic book for the character. Now, I personally have not read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. I know bits and pieces of the storyline, but I've never read it. So I'm going from the perspective of someone who hasn't watched the movie. So in essence, the character that Supergirl or Kara has to work with is called Ruthie. Ruthie, her family got killed by the main villain known as Krem. He kills her family because he wanted to get some source from the father, and the situation was kind of weird because she has a brother and the brother didn't know what was going on because he can see her through the crack of his room as he sees his sister being frozen and staring at her family talking to someone, but he has headphones on listening to music, so he doesn't know what's going on. And he jumps out of his room trying to scare his sister like a goofy little brother, and then Krem decides out of fear, realizing that someone just jumped out of somewhere, threw his weapon at the brother, killing the brother. And of course the parents get mad and pissed and they try to kill Krem. They fail, they die, and he for whatever reason leaves Ruthie alive. Now she goes on this revenge plot to go find him and kill him herself. In the midst of that journey, she tries to find someone to help her and she runs into Kara. At first, Kara rejects her because she has no interest in helping this random stranger on her revenge plot, and re-emphasizes to her that revenge is not the answer and she believes that she should move on and do anything else with her life because revenge will mess her up in the long run. She re-emphasizes this theme consistently throughout the movie. Even after interacting with Ruthie, and Krem for whatever reason randomly finds her ship and tries to steal Supergirl's ship and shoots a poison dart into Krypto, so that way when Krypto starts getting sick, she has to go find the antidote, so she is begrudgingly going to have to find Krem also to get the antidote to save Krypto. She is still re-emphasizing to Ruthie that revenge is not the plot. All she wants is the antidote. That is the main thing. Now imagine my surprise at the end of the movie, Supergirl does everything. She has her whole, full character arc, which, is kind of okay. It's not really done well that greatly. She does her whole superhero final fight thing and she actually defeats Krem. And Krem is lying there and Ruthie's about to stab him with her sword. But Ruthie ends up not doing it because Kara stops her at the last second. Not physically, she stops behind her and she does the whole superhero speech saying, "Revenge is not the answer. This will mess you up in the long run. Please don't do it." So Ruthie, of course, decides not to do the revenge. She ends up not killing him and she walks away. And Supergirl says, "Walk away before you change your mind." And she says, okay. She leaves and Supergirl grabs the sword, and as Krem was about to sit up and he's, talking his shit, Kara proceeds to say, "This is for Krypto," and stabs him in the chest, and then she said, "And this is for what you've done to those little girls," and then stabs him in the neck. So even though the main plot, the main theme for this entire movie is anti-revenge, revenge is not the main thing, revenge is not the goal, revenge is bad, no, stop sign, she proceeds at the very end of the movie to enact revenge on the very villain that she was told at the very beginning that she was not going to do for the other character. What am I watching? What am I watching? It truly is a disappointment because I wanted to see this movie in a pretty positive light because I want to have a lot more hope for the DC movies, and Superman gave me a little bit of hope because I actually liked Superman. Superman was not that bad. I understand that there's some parts that are not too great and there's some choices that are not exactly the most happiest I'm about, but I am looking forward to what they have to do. I want to see what they do with these other characters. But it is unfortunate that Supergirl, which has a really good story in the comic book, because even with the little bits of tiddlywinks I've looked at after finishing the movie, because I plan to read the comic book after the movie, from the little bits of reviews and a little bit of segments I've seen, the storyline in the comic book was so much better. Even the slight changes that they've done doesn't really feel like they made any changes, because I've learned in the ending of the comic book, and the ending was significantly better. In fact, it leans deeper into the very theme that they have been trying to emphasize in this same movie, but it's such a poor execution and a very much watered down and weirder version of it that I don't understand what they were going for. Another weird thing in this movie is the character building and the relationship building between characters in this movie, because I believe Kara and Ruthie throughout this movie are supposed to be begrudging partners. They're not essentially trying to be best friends, but they're empathetic of each other's backstories. They have similar backstories so they can relate to each other, because tragic backstories. Kara's planet got blown up, and then after that, everyone got sick and her family started to die. It was a very big emotional thing for her. And then Rem, of course, seeing her family being killed by Krem. So of course, they have similar goals for each other. But for whatever reason, I don't see or feel the connection between these two characters. They don't build that a solid relationship at any point. And even some of the action sequences where you feel like moments where they're supposed to build some kind of emotional backbone, it doesn't feel like it works. Like, they have the whole bus fight scene where they're on the space bus and they're trying to go to another planet. They're trying to find Krem, and then Ruthie sneaks onto the bus. She was never supposed to be on there. And I feel like they could have taken that moment from there for the next 20 or 30 minutes or so, because I know the fight scene was it was okay. Like, it was pretty hard to follow, and the music choice from that fight scene was pretty bleh also. But they could have taken some moments after that fight scene for them to build that relationship, but it just wasn't a solid thing for me. Like, it didn't work. I didn't feel like it was believable for me to have these two characters act like they might like each other. I don't know how much more deeper I don't know how much deeper to explain it, because this movie is just relatively forgettable. There's not that much in the movie that really stuck with me or hit me. Like, there's some movies that are pretty bad that had one moment or one few sequences or one fight scene or one thing that I ended up liking. There are several movies that have that. That's why they have like higher points for me. But this movie just doesn't have it. And it's such an unfortunate thing, because I really wanted this movie to work. I really wanted it to work. I even expected it to possibly flop, even if it was good, because there's many movies that go through that, especially given that Supergirl is not that super popular of a DC character. But damn, bro, they just fumbled the bag with this movie so badly, to the point that I'm like, I don't know what they're gonna do with the other movies. I'm kind of now begrudgingly unoptimistic for the next DCU movies, because I want Clayface to work, and I really like Clayface as a concept of a DC villain, and I like the Green Lantern, so I really hope they do a good job. But as I'm seeing things go along, and this movie kind of just knocked my excitement down a little bit. It's not that great. But one of the other things that's not really good in this movie, one of the main things that kind of makes me mad, and I think I said it before, like, I'm saying it again, I have to say it again, that needle drop fight scene at the end, the final fight scene in this movie, it really does a really bad job. I know people know the name of the song by heart. I'm not a music person. I'm not that great with naming music off the top of my head, but it's like an acoustic version of I believe a jazz song that's pretty popular, that's very well known for a lot of people. But that song and that ending fight scene, and the choice they made, like the James Gunny choice they made to make Kara have this epic flip around smash attack with Krem. He slams him in the ground 5 times in the ground, and it's like a really cool sequence. So I was expecting to see her do like a cool sequence of her smacking people around and throwing different characters around. Like, I wanted to see the brutality of her fighting, because I wanted them to express her different fighting style compared to Clark. Like, she already is characterized different from Clark, and they do a good job with that. But it would have been cool to see that in how she fights. But you get this slow motion, acoustic, sad sounding ish music where she's just flipping trucks around and dust is flying, and I'm like, this is garbage. It's not even good. It's not even cool. Like, Superman didn't have this. Whoever did this, I can't. Like, whoever did this needs to be fired. But other than that, you know, Millie Alcock in Supergirl, she looks good as Supergirl. The suit looks fire to me. And I will give them credit that the alien designs in this movie look really good. Like, it seems like they did a good amount of effort on, I want to assume, our practical effects on the alien races that exist that she meets when you go through the story. And of course, Lobo looks really great. Like, they did some things that were good. That's what I mean. Like, there was potential for this movie to be good, and the source material was right there for them to do a pretty decent job. They could have worked with it to do different things. And honestly, I'm not gonna act like I know the source material from the back of my hand, but even from the first 5 minutes of what I've seen in the source material, like, they could have done so much better. Some of the changes they did from what I've seen just baffles me. So honestly, if you're a big fan of the comic book, you are more than likely to loathe this movie. I mean that relatively unapologetically. Like, I feel bad, but this is just not a good Supergirl movie. It's not good. I'm sorry. But yeah, those are my feelings about the Supergirl movie. Let me know what you guys feel about the movie if you have watched it already. Were you expecting it to be good? Were you expecting it to be negative? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you agree or even disagree. I want you to like on this video any chance you get. And also don't forget to subscribe for more reviews and other videos just like this in the future. I promise there's going to be another video upload that's not entirely just a review, so look out for that. Also, don't forget to check out my gaming channel. I'm trying to upload there as often as I can. Not daily, I'm trying my best, but as often as I can, so check that out. It's in the link below, or it's going to pop up on screen here, wherever the hell it may be. But yeah, other than that, it's your boy Kadukun. I'll see you guys next time, and peace.
FMA, handle business, don't play. On point when it comes to the anime. Jack and Daxter, ayy, let's go. The ultimate heroes, don't stop, we on the road. Kadukun. Yeah, welcome to the channel.